Well, hello and welcome back to markplex.com. If you're not familiar with the site, then please go to markplex.com, and also please sign up for our email list, and then I'll let you know when I create new tutorials or programs. Today's tutorial is a tutorial to show and demonstrate how to create trend lines using the new TradeStation BNPoint objects and the trendline objects. And one of the big differences between this and using the old TL_new function, which you may be familiar with, is that in this case we can draw trend lines to points which are based on their bar number rather than their date time. And one of the limitations of the TL_new historically was that in terms of specifying the end point of a line, it was done based on the date and the time. The trouble was the time could only be specified to the minute level. So if you had something like a 10-second bar chart such as this one, or a tick chart, then you would have problems. Now incidentally, what this program does is just draw lines between subsequent low pivots, and so you can see here it's doing that quite happily on the pound dollar 10-second chart. Okay, so what I've already done is created a program, and I put in the inputs just to save a little bit of time, and we'll probably be touching upon those as we go through the program. But what I want to do now is just fill in the rest of the program, and hopefully you'll get an idea as to how it's put together. And incidentally, what I'm going to do is for Gold Pass members there will be a free download, or at least you can copy and paste the program. If you're not a Gold Pass member, you can also download this program for a small fee. Okay, so first thing we need to do is find out if there has been a pivot, and we're going to do that by saying condition 1 is equal to, and we're going to use the pivot function, and we're going to be looking, as I say, for low pivots. We only want to know about the most up-to-date pivot. This function will go back and find the last several, but we only need to know the latest. So I'm just going to put in a look back length of right strength plus 1, and incidentally, pivot inputs, left strength of pivot is left strength, right strength is right strength, so we need to put those in here. Left strength, right strength, and we want to know the most recent, so that becomes 1. We want to know low pivots, so that's -1. And then this is going to return two values, O pivot price and O pivot bar. So what I might do is just copy those to save a little bit of typing time. O pivot price, let's get rid of the value and the type. And because I'm converting this into a true false, we need to say is not equal to -1. In other words, what this function will do, if it hasn't found a pivot, it will return -1. If it does find a pivot, it won't return -1, and then condition 1 will evaluate it to true. So that's telling us when we've got a pivot. When we find a pivot, we want to do several things. So we'll say if condition 1. Now, one thing that we'll find in this program is that if this function finds a pivot in the middle of a bar, it literally keeps on finding it throughout the bar. We only really want to know that a pivot has been confirmed at the end of the bar. Otherwise you get a situation where there was a pivot, there wasn't a pivot, there was a pivot, there wasn't a pivot. So in order to just do this at the end of the bar, we're going to say bar status is equal to, which in other words means the last tick of the bar. And then what we want to do is store, having just found a new pivot, we want to first of all put in the bar number and the price for the previous pivot, because we need to know that when we're drawing our lines. So each time a new pivot is found, the bar number is put in new bar, and similarly with price. So what I'm going to do is just retain those values before we overwrite them in the program, since we've just found a new pivot. Now, one of the things about BNPoint that you'll need to know is that the bar number is not the same as bar number or current bar. In fact, we need to do a little bit of a adjustment here because it's actually a zero-based index that doesn't start from the first bar on the chart, doesn't follow from max bars back, as do bar number and current bar. So in this particular case, we take the bar number. We know that this this pivot has happened O pivot bar ago. So we subtract that. We have to add back on the max bars back. And then because it's a zero base, we need to subtract 1 like so. So that is the new bar, and the new price is equal to O pivot price. Which is returned by that function. Okay, so if this is applied to a chart, so I'm just going to test that it is and say get app info, and to test if it's applied to a chart, we're going to say AI application type is equal to 1. That's just saying, is this applied to a chart? Then we're going to create our BNPoint 1 and BNPoint 2. And again, these are already set up in the variables you can see here higher up in the program. So the syntax is BNPoint dot create. Oh, and incidentally, one of the things you'll notice is that as I was typing that in, the thing was not auto-completing. And one of the things that we're going to need to do is include some namespaces which contain the class definitions that we're going to be using. So I'm going to say using EL system dot drawing, and another one using EL system dot drawing objects, like so. Okay, so let's go back down to the BNPoint create, and the inputs to this are the bar number and the price. Well, we've just calculated the old bar number, so we're going to do old bar and old price, like so, and then we need to create BNPoint 2. You'll notice this time when I press the period, I get the option to click create, except this one is going to be new bar, new price. So we're going to join the old to the new, but that's just creating the BNPoint. We actually need now to create the trend line. We do that again. We've created a null object for the trend line up here, so we can now use that. So we can say trend line 1 equals trend line dot create. Again, that's auto completing, and we just need to put in the beginning point and the end point, which is BNPoint 1 and BNPoint 2, like so. Okay, so that's created the trend line, but it hasn't added it to the chart. And what we can do to do that, if we just go down a little further, is just say drawing objects add, auto completing there again, and we're going to tell it to add the trend line that we just created. And just noticed here that we need to have a begin statement, because we're going to need to have a corresponding end statement here. Okay, so that's the bare bones of the program. What I'm going to do is just verify it and just check if we've made any typing errors, and looks like we have. So we just misspelt right strength there. Let's verify again. Okay, there's a couple more things that we need to remember to do before we get much further. We need to add a begin here because we only want to run this when those conditions are true. So I'm just going to tab that in and say end. Okay, so let's verify that. We're going to add some more things to the trend line in a minute, but let's just first of all have a quick look at the chart. Now you can see at the moment it's a bit of a jumble, and the reason for that is we've not set the extend to the right to be false. So that's one of the first things we're going to do. So trend line 1 dot ext right equals false. What I'm also going to do is make this persist so that the trend line remains on the screen even after a tick refreshes. Okay, so let's verify that, and actually that should be trend line 1. Let's go back to the chart. Okay, now it's looking a little bit more like we expected. And a few final things just to style the trend line, and we want to be able to control the color, the weight, and the style. So we can do that very simply. We've already created some appropriate inputs. So trendline 1 dot color is equal to color dot from name, and I call this lower color, like so. The weight is simply weight, so trendline 1 dot weight is equal to, I call it TL weight, and then finally the style. Okay, so let's verify that. Okay, another error. Trendline 1 style. Okay, so we can go to the chart and we can see the chart there now. Now, one of the potential issues with using the BNPoint is on certain charts where there are bars missing, and the way we can control that is if we go to edit, or rather view, chart analysis preferences, click on symbol, make sure that these are not clicked, because for example if we click that to show the empty daily trading periods, then you'll notice that these pivots are no longer being drawn in the correct place. So that's something to bear in mind when you're using the BNPoint. Anyway, I hope you found this useful, and as I say, I will make this available at no cost to Gold Pass members, and for a nominal fee if you want to save yourself some typing. Thank you.